The storm had passed hours ago, but the tension it left behind clung to the air like static. The mansion's halls were bright, white marble shining under tall chandeliers, yet the mood was cold enough to make people shiver. Technicians had been working all morning, hurrying back and forth, wires dragging behind them like veins torn out of the house. And still, the security system was dead. The CEO paced like a frustrated king stripped of his crown, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the floor. His pride wasn't in the company he ran or the wealth he had. No, this mansion was his trophy, his proof that he had climbed higher than anyone else. When the last technician unplugged his laptop with a defeated sigh, the CEO's face twisted in irritation. "Pathetic," he snapped. "Is there anyone under this roof who isn't completely useless?" His voice echoed through the hall. People bowed their heads, avoided his eyes. He loved moments like this. Moments where power felt like something visible, thick, intoxicating. Miriam was standing near the back, her hands clasped together tightly. She had seen him angry before, but never with this sharp edge. This house had always felt to her like a beast with a heartbeat, and right now it felt hungry. Elijah stood beside her, not scared, just observing. He didn't shrink when the CEO's voice rose. He didn't flinch. He was staring at the open panel of tangled wires like it was a puzzle begging to be solved. The CEO's gaze moved, landing on Miriam first, then sliding down to Elijah. "You," he said with a sneer of amusement, "the genius boy." Everyone knew the tone, condescending, mocking. "Go on then, fix it. If you can repair this, I'll give you the mansion." The laughter that followed was sharp, cruel, a joke at their expense. The staff exchanged uneasy looks. No one believed it was a real offer. This was entertainment for the rich. Miriam's heart lurched painfully. She wanted to pull Elijah behind her, to say no, to tell him they didn't need to prove anything to a man who had never seen either of them as human. But she also knew Elijah. If he saw a problem, he solved it. He always had. Elijah stepped forward without a word. His movements were slow, deliberate. He crouched beside the security panel and gently traced the wires with the tips of his fingers, like a person reading Braille. His eyes didn't waver or rush. The laughter died down, not suddenly but in uncomfortable ripples, as people began to realize this wasn't hesitation. It was analysis. The CEO crossed his arms, smirking again. This should be good, time stretched. The room was silent except for the faint hum of electronics trying to revive. Elijah unplugged two components, reconnected a grounding cable the technicians had overlooked, and bypassed a burnt-out relay entirely. His hands were sure, his breathing steady. He didn't need manuals. He didn't need help. Miriam watched him work, tears gathering in her eyes, not of fear, not even of hope, but of recognition. Her boy wasn't just gifted. He belonged to a world bigger than this house had allowed him to see. With a final tap on the motherboard housing, the monitors flickered. Once, twice, then. The entire system came back online, every screen glowing with flawless stability, the sound of it powering. Up was louder than any shout. The CEO's smirk vanished. A hush swept over the hall. Elijah stood, wiping dust from his fingers. He didn't smile. He didn't look proud. He just spoke softly, almost politely. "It's fixed." The sound that followed was not applause, not cheering, just stunned silence. The kind of silence that comes when something impossible has quietly unfolded right in front of you. The technicians stared at their own equipment in disbelief, double-checking what they already knew. The screens were steady. The system was stable. Elijah had done in minutes what they couldn't manage in 3 days. The CEO's jaw tightened. His face had gone a shade paler, but his eyes were burning with something ugly, something cornered. He was a man used to being the smartest in the room, the one who made others feel small. And now, this boy he hadn't even considered worth looking at had made him feel exposed. Miriam's hands trembled, but she forced herself still. She didn't want to look proud. She didn't want to look relieved. She didn't want to invite punishment. Her entire life in this house had taught her that victories must be quiet, invisible, swallowed. But her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might break her ribs. Someone whispered, softly but loud enough to carry, "He actually did it." The CEO whipped his head toward the voice. "He didn't do anything special," he snapped, but his voice lacked its usual sharp certainty. The technicians clearly loosened the wiring before— "No, they didn't," another man said, this time firmer. A man who had stood nearby watching the whole thing. The boy saw the ground fault immediately. He bypassed the entire relay board. That fix shouldn't even be possible unless he actually knows what he's doing, someone else finished. The CEO's nostrils flared. His power was slipping, like sand through his fingers in front of everyone. And nothing terrified him more. Miriam finally found her voice. It came out shaky at first. "Sir, the deal you made—" "Deal?" he barked. He turned to her as though she had insulted him. "What deal?" Her breath caught. Elijah stepped forward. Not aggressively, just enough to stand beside her. "You said if I fixed the system, the mansion would be mine." His voice was calm, level. He wasn't challenging. He was simply stating a fact. The CEO laughed, but the laugh was hollow, brittle, almost panicked. "Are you serious?" A joke. Obviously, it was a joke. "Do you think I would just hand over my mansion to a janitor's son?" The staff exchanged glances. Not one of them was smiling anymore. A man from the legal department who had been standing near the doorway cleared his throat. "Actually, sir, witnesses heard your exact words, and they would be legally interpreted as a verbal contract if contested." All the air seemed to leave the room. The CEO turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "You're siding with them?" "No," the legal worker said, voice steady. "I'm siding with the truth." The CEO's chest rose and fell too fast. He looked at Elijah again. Really looked at him. Not as a servant's child, not as background scenery, but as a threat. He stepped forward, grabbed Elijah's collar, pulling him close. His voice was low, trembling. Not from fear, but from a rage he didn't know how to control. "How did you learn this? Who taught you? Who is behind you?" Elijah didn't blink. His eyes were dark and bright at the same time. Calm, sharp, steady. "No one," he said. "I watch, I listen. I learn what people think I don't understand." The CEO's grip faltered, because in that moment he realized the truth. He had never been alone in his power. The boy had been there, silent, absorbing everything. Miriam put a hand on Elijah's back, not to pull him away, but to remind him she was there. The CEO released him and stepped back, shaken. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge defeat. He simply turned and walked away. But everyone in the room knew. The mansion no longer felt like his. Morning came slowly, with a stillness that felt unreal, like the air itself was holding its breath. The CEO had left in the dead of night, his departure echoing through the halls more loudly than any argument could have. The servants had watched from windows as his black car disappeared past the gates. Not one person tried to stop him. Not one person felt sorry. Miriam awoke before sunrise, just as she always had. For a moment she forgot everything. She reached for her uniform. Creased, faded, always washed 100 times too many. She tied her hair back with the same old elastic band. Habit lived in her bones. But when she stepped out into the hallway, she stopped. The house wasn't the same. It didn't feel like something she had to tiptoe around anymore. The chandelier didn't seem to glare down at her. The floors didn't feel like forbidden marble. It was as though the house itself was waiting for her to speak first. She found Elijah sitting at the great dining table. He hadn't slept much. It was clear from the faint shadows under his eyes. But he wasn't tired. He was thinking, quietly, deeply, hands folded on the table, gaze distant but steady. "You're up early," Miriam said softly, though her voice still carried caution. He looked up and smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to soften him. "So are you." Miriam hesitated, then sat across from him. She had never sat here before. 20 years of service, and she had never once sat at this table. The chair felt wrong under her hands, too soft, too important. She almost stood up again. Elijah reached out, touched her wrist gently. "This is ours now." The words hit harder than she expected. For years, she had swallowed pieces of herself to survive. And suddenly, there it was. Freedom so large she didn't know where to place it. The staff gathered gradually, unsure whether they were supposed to keep working or wait for orders that would never come. Some lingered in doorways. Some wiped their faces discreetly, overwhelmed. Others looked to Elijah, not because he demanded it, but because there was something calm, grounded, unshakable about him. A younger maid, barely 18, spoke first. What happens now?" Elijah turned toward her. His expression stayed thoughtful. "No one is forced to stay," he said. "No one here is a servant anymore. We can decide together what this place becomes." There was a hush, warm, unfamiliar, not the silence of fear, the silence of something beginning. Miriam felt tears rising again. She didn't try to stop them this time. Her voice cracked. "Elijah, all I ever wanted was for you to have a chance. Just a chance." He moved to her side, resting his hand over hers. "You gave me everything I needed," he said. "You worked so I could learn. You suffered so I could grow. This house isn't a trophy. It's a door. And we're going to open it." Outside, sunlight poured over the lawn. The world looked bigger than it ever had. The mansion, once a symbol of someone else's power, now held a different kind of strength. Not loud, not cruel, quiet, steady, real. Elijah and Miriam stood together in the doorway, their shadows stretching long across polished floors they no longer had to kneel to. For the first time in their lives, they stepped forward not as servants, but as owners, dreamers and builders of a future that finally belonged to them.